Hello, my name is Denise Jaramillo, Superintendent of the Alhambra Unified School District. I'd like to say thank you first for joining us today. Our goal with the presentation is to give you some preliminary information on the plans we're making for the 2020-21 school year. I know there are many unknowns. There are many questions that families have. We are going to do our best to answer many of those questions through this presentation. We'll also introduce you to some information on opportunities you will have to get your questions answered. So first, if I could introduce you to who's joining me today. We have our Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, Janet Lees, our Assistant Superintendent of Student and Employee Welfare, Patricia Mahoney, and our Assistant Superintendent of Facilities and Planning Development, George Murray. Next slide, please. So through this presentation, we're going to cover a few things. First, we're going to give you an overview of the models of instruction that we're considering for this fall. We're going to review our plans on how to implement the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health order as it pertains to cleanliness and safety on our campuses. We're going to give you an overview of some of the facilities, steps we are taking. We'll talk a little bit about our thoughts on sports and athletics, get some information on daycare, and then certainly next steps in our planning. Next slide, please. I need to begin by saying that guidance is still emerging. You have heard different government agencies release their information on the opening of schools, and we have received all of that as well, and we are using that to model many of our decisions. But there's two pieces of big guidance that are just now emerging. The first is from the state of California, and it's the Education Trailer Bill, known as AB 77. That is the bill that is going to set all of the law regarding our instructional delivery requirements. It's the piece of legislation that's going to tell us how much in-person versus distance learning. It's going to talk to us about the instructional minutes requirements we will have to meet, how many days our students will have to be in school. But what we're hearing about that right now is that it's very clear that the governor and the legislature strongly encourage our children to physically return to school while we fully implement the local public health order. So we're going to watch for the details of the trailer bill to come out, and we will refine all of our delivery methods to comply with that law. The second big piece of guidance that we're waiting on is from the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health. They will be issuing an order for the safe reopening of schools. And it is that local county health order that we have to follow, that we will have to follow, as it will provide guidance on the requirements for health, safety, and cleanliness on our campuses. Next slide, please. So I'm going to ask Pat Mahoney to give you some details on the DPH Safety Guidelines for schools.
As Superintendent Jaramillo indicated, we still don't have the final Department of Public Health order for LA County. So these are the anticipated safety guidelines that we believe we will need to put into place as we open and plan for the 2021 school year. It's anticipated that we will need to do symptom checking that may happen at home before staff and students come to school each day. Parents may need to help us with that, and that will be determined by LA County Department of Public Health as to what that process needs to be. We need all students and staff to stay home if they are sick and showing any symptoms of illness. Face coverings will be required for all students, staff, and visitors that come to campus, as is consistent with that LA County Department of Public Health order. Along with mandatory face coverings, all students and staff must wear a visible district issued identification card. Hand washing and sanitizing is going to be required by students and staff throughout the day, including as soon as students arrive to school, before and after breaks, before lunch, after lunch, and as they return to class. We are considering a staggered start time to maximize social distancing on campuses. Next slide, please. Parents and visitor access to campus will be by appointment only and limited to essential business only. We need to implement the defined health protocols. We will define those procedures so that in the event that a student becomes ill or a staff member becomes ill, that we know how to implement and make sure we identify anyone that might have been exposed to COVID-19 should a case arise on one of our campuses. We will establish very defined routines for start and end of school day to encourage appropriate spacing as much as what is practicable. And bus transportation will be provided, again, consistent with the LA County Department of Public Health guidelines and the AUSD board policy. Next slide, please. I am now going to turn it over to George Murray.
Thank you. Facility services. These are the preparations that we are making both for the opening of school and then what we hope to achieve when school is open. So this summer, we are thoroughly cleaning and disinfecting all classrooms, activity areas, and offices. We are using cleaning chemicals that have EPA-approved disinfectants within them, known to kill corona-type viruses such as COVID-19. We are also performing site assessments with each principal to identify needed modifications, such as how students will move from one area of the school to the other, and other items, how the office staff will function, for instance. We are limiting the number of student desks in each classroom so that we can conform to the required distancing recommendations. We are also adding plexiglass panels and partitions, distancing markers to show where people should stand, kind of like what you may see at the grocery store these days, and signage directing how people should move from one place to the other and where things are on the site. We're also checking ventilation to increase fresh air in classrooms and offices, as extra air coming in from outside has been shown to help mitigate virus infection. We're also installing hand sanitizer station throughout the school sites. And we're checking that all faucets and sinks are working properly for hand washing. When school opens, facility services intends to schedule creatively and possibly with the help of other employees at classrooms to be cleaned and disinfected routinely. Restrooms will be cleaned and disinfected throughout the day, and we will ensure that they are stocked with soap and paper towels. High touch areas such as handrails on the staircases, door handles, doorknobs, countertops, things that are touched regularly and frequently will be disinfected repeatedly throughout the day. And play equipment is to be disinfected daily. Next slide, please. Our Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, Ms. Janet Lees, will take it from here.
Let's talk about the instructional models. So as we are complying, or as we comply with emerging state and county guidelines, as our superintendent stated earlier, we want to be able to give parents a choice of options in terms of instructional program. So with that, I want to talk about the two options that we are providing. Option number one is the in-person instruction, and it's more than likely a hybrid or a blended model so that students will be getting physically be in school and receive face-to-face instruction part of the time, and part of the time they will be at home receiving instruction. And of course, when they're at school, we will be practicing the physical distancing requirements. Option number 2 is the 100% distance learning, where they will be receiving all of their instruction at home. And of course, each option has its challenges as well as its considerations. The other piece that we need to keep in mind is that we as a district have to be prepared that we could be in full school opening, or we could be in full distance learning as determined by the local health order or changes in state regulations. Next slide. So when we talk about either option, I want to be clear about what will be provided no matter what, whether we're in 100% distance learning or whether we are in some kind of a blended or hybrid model. So one of the pieces of information we receive clearly from our stakeholders, which includes our parents as well as our students, is that there needs to be an alignment of online platforms. And when we look at our primary grades, K through 2nd, we will be using Seesaw as that online platform that will be used across grade levels in those grade levels. 3rd grade will be that year of transition where students will be moving from the use of Seesaw to Google Classroom. And then in 4th through 12th grade, all of those classrooms will be utilizing Google Classroom. As far as expectations of delivery, like I said, either model, we are expecting daily direct instruction. We are also expecting daily face-to-face synchronous instruction, which means that it could be physically in a face-to-face setting, or it could be through a video conferencing mode, such as through Zoom. And then either delivery model, there will be opportunities for small group instruction or support as needed. Next slide, please. So when we talk about those delivery options, option number 1 is the in-person, more than likely a hybrid or blended model. And as I already stated, a blend of physically attending school for part of the time, and then part of the time participating in distance learning from home. And for those eligible students, a school breakfast and lunch program will be provided. Next slide, please. In the option number 2, the 100% distance learning program, we recognize that there are families for whatever reason may not feel comfortable having your children physically attend school in the fall. And so in order to support these students, we are developing a distance learning program to meet the academic as well as the social emotional needs of our students. Please note, and I think this is a very, very important note, in the spring of 2020, what we offered at that time was more of I call it an emergency pandemic distance learning plan, which will be very different from the plan that we offer in the fall. It will be a full online learning curriculum at all grade levels. As mentioned earlier, there will be daily virtual face-to-face lessons and activities that will also allow students to work in small groups. There will be a schedule with direct instruction occurring daily through the use of the video conferencing modality. And then there will be grading of assignments to monitor the progress of students as well as their attendance. And I already mentioned this one. There'll be opportunities to work individually and in small group virtually through a video conferencing mode. And then there will be the availability of a school breakfast and lunch program for pickup within the community. Okay, and as we move to the next slide, I'm going to reintroduce Pat Mahoney.
So we realize that there are families that require daycare for their kids. So we are going to work with our outside agencies, and we are going to facilitate making referrals for those families that do need childcare And we know that there might be two needs. There might be parents that need childcare on days when their kids are not attending in-school instruction. We also realize that there might be parents who only need daycare on days after school when their kids are on campus. So we are going to identify those outside agencies that are planning to provide daycare for your children, and then we are going to provide those referrals to parents. Next slide, please. Talk a little bit about sports and athletics. There are lots of questions about whether or not fall sports are going to take place. So whether or not we bring back the athletics, it is a local decision, but we have to follow the recommendations of state, CIF, as well as our local Department of Public Health authorities. So there is a CIF Sports Medicine Advisory Committee that was developed, and they are making recommendations for schools to consider as to whether or not athletic activities will take place. Whatever CIF recommends, the local school district is also subject to local county guidelines, and that has to be taken into consideration as to whether schools can implement and offer fall sports. At this time, there are no group activities allowed, and that includes practice and games. Students can do individual practicing and conditioning, but it needs to be done individually. We are anticipating that the CIF state office is going to issue an official recommendation no later than Monday, July 20th. But remember, our local Department of Public Health order will also determine whether or not Alhambra can implement the recommendations that might be made at the state level. Next slide, please. I am going to now introduce our superintendent, Denise Jaramillo.
So the information you received, I know it's a lot, and it's simultaneously a lot and not enough. I'm sure you have many questions. I'd like to talk a little bit about the next steps for you. We really need to hear from you, and we need to plan for your child. So the first next step is you will be receiving a letter from me. It will come to you through our electronic system, Blackboard Connect, typically emailed to you. And in that letter, it will give many of the details and a few more that we had in this presentation. But at the end of the letter, it asks you to use a program link, and I'm going to show you that here. The program link is where we need to hear from you on what it is the program you are requesting for your child. So this is a very, very simple link that we need information specifically from you. We need to know your child's school, your child's name, their birth date. If you have their ID number, that will help us. We need a number where we can contact you. And then we have three very important questions. Question number one, what is your preference for your child? And if we don't hear from you directly through the letter, we will have folks contacting you because we need to plan for your child. We will want to know, are you requesting the in-person hybrid learning program? Or are you opting to keep your child at home on distance learning for the year? Understanding that things may change with the county and the state, and we have to revert to full distance learning, or we get an all clear to open up. Second question we need to hear from you. As Ms. Lee said, all of our program, whether it's distance learning or our in-person hybrid, will require a component of distance learning. So there's a question here. We need to know, do you have reliable internet access? And that answer, yes or no, will help us know how to help plan for you. And then the last question on childcare. We know that schools historically have served as a place where children could be and learn while parents were working. We need to know if you will be needing childcare. We are working with our community partners, and we want to be able to plan for the correct number of families. So we are going to ask everyone to be sure and complete this link for each child in their family. And we're asking that will be done within the next 2 weeks. Back to the final PowerPoint. Thank you. So we know you have questions, and we want to answer those questions. We know you have ideas and perspectives that we need to hear as well. We have scheduled 2 parent meetings. One will be Wednesday, July 1st at 5 p.m. The second will be Thursday, July 2nd at 10 a.m. And the Zoom links are listed on our district website. So we encourage you to join one of those meetings. It'll be similar to this presentation, but it'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions directly, and so we can answer those directly. Even if after attending a meeting or with this PowerPoint, if you have a question, we want to hear those questions as soon as you have them. We have an email set up and we monitor that regularly. You can send your questions to edservices@ausd.us. So I need to close first a very sincere thank you for your commitment to your students' education and for your support of the district as we're working through this. And you've heard it many times through, we are in this together. We truly are. Someone told me that it's like we're trying to walk a straight line in the middle of a hurricane. It is challenging because things change. But we will get through it, and we will ensure our students get a quality education. Please keep in touch with us. I look forward to hearing from you through the Zoom link, through the link, and then also through the meetings. Please send us your questions and have a safe and hopefully a relaxing summer. Thank you.